What's up, everyone? In this video, I'm going to show you how to build a Slack agent where it will not only have context, but also have memory. We're going to be using Slack, of course, and also Supabase. The core use cases for this bot, customer support teams have an external agent where your customers can actually understand issues and get things solved as quickly as possible. Another use case is sales teams. Imagine a way for you to take sales calls, be able to save those into Supabase, and then use Slack where you can conversate with past calls. And then lastly, internal knowledge management. Say if you have millions of documents and you want a way to be able to understand those documents without having to read it, this is the video for you. And we're going to be building all of this leveraging my favorite tool, NAN. NAN is a tool that allows you to build AI agents without writing any code. And I'm going to show you how to build this agent from start to finish. Okay, so the first step we want to take is creating an account in Supabase. After you have an account created, now we want to create a project. So I'm going to go to a new project. And the name is going to be build with Moses. And then make sure whatever you put as the password, you remember it because we're going to need it in the future when it comes to NAN. So I'm just going to use strong password. Hopefully you didn't see that. I'm going to click copy and I'm going to do create new account or new project. Perfect. Now that we have our Supabase account created, now let's go back to NAN and start our workflow. Okay, so we're in NAN. The first thing we want to do is create a way for us to upload documents into our vector database. Okay, and then after we do the form submission, we're going to add a Supabase vector store, and we're going to do add documents to vector store. Okay, when you're in Supabase vector store, what I want you to do is hit this drop down. If you don't have any, you should have an option that says create new credential. I'm going to select that, and I'm going to go to Open Docs. After I get to Open Docs, it gives me two options, Supabase and Supabase vector store. I'm going to select Supabase vector store, and I'm going to scroll down until I find quick start for setting up your vector store. And what I want you to do is copy this and go back to Supabase. When you're in Supabase, there's an option for your SQL editor. I want you to copy and paste that into the editor, and then I want you to click run. Once you click run, it just says success, no rows returned. And if you go to your tables, you should see the option for documents, which means that 1, we have a documents table created, and 2, we have a place for our vector data to be saved. So now let's go back to NAN and see what credentials we need in order to connect our Supabase to NAN. Okay, beautiful. So now that we're back in NAN, we see we need our host and we need our service role secret. So I'm going to go back to Supabase and find that information. You find that by going to project settings. You want to go to data API. You want to click copy for your URL. And then I'm going to go back to Supabase and paste that there. And then I'm going to go back and go to API keys, find my service role secret, copy it, and then go back to Supabase. Click save, and that should work. Beautiful. So now that we have our vector store set up, what we need to do is select our table name. It's going to be documents. And then for now, what we need to do is connect an embeddings, and we're just going to leverage OpenAI for now. In order to connect your OpenAI to NAN, what you need to do is just go to create new credential, go to the API console for OpenAI, create an API, and paste it right here. And once you have that set up, you should see your OpenAI account there. So I already have mine connected. And then now what I want to do is add a document loader. I'm going to use the default document loader, and JSON is fine for now. Cool. So now let's actually configure our on form submission. So our form title is going to be add document. And then for our form element, we're going to use document upload. And then the element type is going to be, it's going to be a file. Beautiful. And then we're going to check off multiple files for now. Okay, perfect. So now we can actually test this. So I'm going to go to SQ workflow. It's going to take us to a URL where we can upload a document. I'm going to choose what document to upload. Right now, I'm just going to upload a test document. I'm going to click submit, go back to NAN. And as you can see, our document was uploaded. In order to actually test this, let's go to Supabase to make sure that data is being saved. So I'm going to go to our tables. I'm going to go to documents. And as you can see, our document is not only saved, but it also was vectored. So now we can have conversations with that document. That brings us into our next step. Let's actually build out a chatbot within NAN and see if we're able to get enough answers. And then we'll take that same chatbot and go over to Slack. So the first thing I'm going to do is come and add a chat node. And it's going to be a chat trigger. Now that we have a chat node, we need a way to actually process what the intent is of the person that's asking the question. That's the perfect place for AI agent. If you ever build an AI agent in N8N or just an AI agent in general, you know that AI agent has three components: a brain, memory, and tools. So what we want to do is leverage our AI agent node within N8N, and we need to connect to a model, which is going to be our brain. So we're going to use OpenAI for our brain. We're going to use Postgres memory. We're going to set that up after we actually get our vector connection set up. And then for our tool, we're going to use vector store, specifically Supabase. And I'm going to come over and I'm going to select Supabase agent account 3, which is the same account that I set up for the ingest of our documents. And for now, it's going to be retrieve documents, and then the table name is going to be documents. That's all we're going to do now. We're going to come back and add our description. And we need to make sure we add embeddings, and we're also going to use OpenAI. Beautiful. But we actually have to add a description. Chat with build with Moses documents. Beautiful. Okay. So now let's set up our Postgres memory. So I'm going to come to this dropdown. I'm going to go to create new credential. And this is very important, so please pay close mind. So what I'm going to do is go back to Supabase. We're in Supabase, and now we're going to click connect. And what we want to do, I'm going to use the transaction puller. And what I'm going to do is come over to view parameters. I'm just going to copy this information over to N8N. So I'm going to click copy for our host, come back and click paste. I'm going to click copy for our database. It's already Postgres, so for user, I'm going to click copy. And as you can see, I copied a lot of stuff before I was able to actually paste my password. So I'm going to go back to my password. Before I do that, I'm going to make sure my port is correct, which is right here. And then I'm going to come back to Supabase, go to database settings, go to restart database password, and then just select new password. I'm actually going to go to generate password, copy that, come back to N8N and paste it here, and then click save. Once you have that set up, now we have Postgres memory set up, which means that when you chat with your chatbot in Slack or wherever, it's going to save every conversation, which means that it's going to use context from the past conversation in order to improve the responses. So a good example is that I'm going to come here and just say, hey, and if I go over to Supabase and go to our database, you see that my conversation is being saved into the database. So that's exactly what we want. So the next thing we want to do before we actually migrate this bot over to Slack, we want to add a couple things to our agent. We want to add a system message. We actually want to test to see if we're getting relevant information from our Supabase vector. So, okay, so next thing we want to do is come here and we're going to go down to add options, system message. I'm going to paste this pretty in-depth system message that I have. And what I want to do next is I want to come to our tool and I want to rename it to Supabase _ vector store tool. Beautiful. Okay, so let's actually test this out. To do that, let me go into Supabase and understand what type of data we currently have in our vector store. So one thing I want us to change before we actually test this is that we need to go to default data loader, and this will be in the Supabase vector upload stores that we created. And what we want to do is change JSON to binary, and everything else is perfect. So now what will happen is that all the document data will be uploaded, because if I go back to Supabase, as you can see, the only thing that's really being uploaded is the metadata, but we want all the core content to be uploaded. So what I'm going to do is delete this data, and I'm going to come back to Supabase, and I'm actually going to upload the same document again and show you the difference. So now we're about to add a document, we're just going to add the same document, submit, and then we're going to go back to N8N. Okay, perfect. So now that that's been uploaded, let's make sure that all the document information has been uploaded to our database. Okay, beautiful. So we have all the metadata. So now what I'm going to do is come back here and I'm going to scroll down into the chatbot, as you can see, and I'm going to ask, who is Billhouse and who are they serving? Okay, beautiful. So it gives a breakdown and all this information is coming directly from the document. So we successfully set up our form submission where we can upload documents to our vector database. and we've successfully set up our actual tool where we're able to go in and have a conversation with those same documents. The next step is to set up a Slack bot, or we can do the same thing, but within Slack. Okay, so the first step we want to take is go to api.slack.com/apps, and then make sure you're signed into your Slack account. And next, what we're going to do is go to create new app, and we're going to select from scratch. And then I'm just going to name the app. So I'm going to name it Build with Moses Bot. For select workspace, I'm just going to do build house and then create app. Cool. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is go down to OAuth and permissions. And we want to scroll down until we find bot token scopes. And then we're going to add an OAuth scope. Then if I go back to NAN, specifically the documentation for NAN, in Slack, there's a list of permissions that we need to add. So I'm just going to go through all of these and add these permissions. Once we have our bot token scopes, I'm going to scroll up until I find bot user OAuth token, and I'm going to copy that. So once we have our bot access token, we want to come back to NAN, and we want to add a Slack node. And the Slack node that we're looking for is under triggers, and then specifically is on bot at mention. And once we have that, what we want to do is we want to come here, we want to add a new credential, and we want to paste the access token here. Beautiful. So now let's go back to Slack, and the next thing we want to do is go to our basic information. Then we want to scroll down to find signing secret, show it, copy it, and come back to Slack, and then paste it in signature secret and save it. Cool, that worked. The next thing we want to do is we want to come down, we want to make sure we can see all the channels within our workspace, and we want to select the one that we want the bot to be housed in. Essentially, what I mean by that is that this is the main channel that you want people to communicate with that bot. For me, it's going to be built with Moses 1. So I selected that. And the next thing I need to do is actually come over to webhook URLs. I need to copy test URL. And I need to come back. I need to find event subscriptions. I need to make sure it's on. And what I'm going to do is change it so I can show you how it works. I'm going to paste it here. And as you can see, you should get an error that says your URL doesn't respond with the value of the challenge parameter. And this basically means that in NAN, there's no response coming from the webhook when you're in test mode. What you need to do is come back to NAN. You need to select execute step. As you can see, we're getting an error because our project is on. And just remember that in this case, we need to turn off the active state, and we need to come back and click execute workflow, and that should work. So I'm going to come back. I'm going to do retry. As you can see, it's verified. So then we want to come down to subscribe to bot events. The ones that are really important is at mention. So this is important because it will basically send a message to our workflow. If the bot is mentioned, we need message.channels. This means that if a message was posted in a specific channel, and then also if a message was posted in direct message channel. The last one's not important right now, but I just put it just in case. And then I'm going to do save changes. And as you can see, it works. So now what I need to do is actually test this process. In order to do that, I'm going to come back. I'm going to ensure that we're still triggering our event. And then I want to go back to Slack, and I actually want to test this workflow by just messaging and mentioning this bot. So we're back in Slack. What I'm going to do is say, hey, and then I'm going to go back to NAN. As you can see, we got the message. And what happens here, just to give you a breakdown, is that we can see what happened. So the type of trigger, and then also we can see the message that the user sent. So this is exactly what we want. So the next thing we need to do is take this Slack trigger and go over to our AI agent and configure it where instead of us waiting for a chat trigger, we're waiting for a Slack trigger. So I'm going to pull this over here. I'm going to disconnect our chat trigger with our AI agent. Then I'm going to connect Slack to our AI agent. And then now what I'm going to do is come to our AI agent. And for this, what I want you to do is ensure that define below is selected, which means that we can define where our message is coming from. And what I'm going to do next is just drag this text over. Something to be mindful in Slack, sometimes when you go into production, this turns into the first position in the array versus the second. So that's something that you might have to change, but we're just going to keep it as the second position in the array for now. And then I'm going to do execute. And what's going to happen is that it's going to run our AI agent like it was before, and it's going to give us a response, right? And then now what we want to do is disconnect this respond to chat node. We want to use a Slack node. The one that we're looking for specifically is send a message in channel, or in this case, just send a message. Cool. And then the channel is going to be built with Moses. And then the message is going to be whatever the output is. Cool. Now I'm going to do execute, and what should happen is that I should go back to Slack, and we should actually see that message. As you can see, it says, hi there, how can I help you today, and so on and so forth. So cool, that's working. So let's make 2 changes before we actually switch out our test URL with our production URL. The first thing I want to change is that I don't want automated with this N8N workflow to show up. So let me show you how to do that. So we're back in N8N. What we want to do is come over to our send a message, and we want to go to add option, and we want to find include link to workflow, and we want to toggle that off. So when I send a message again and I go back to Slack, as you can see, that message is not included. So we're good. The next thing I want to add is that I actually want to test this workflow from start to finish. So what I'm going to do is go back to N8N. I'm going to execute workflow, which means that I'm just going to start the test trigger. And I'm going to say, tell me about Fieldhouse. And what's happening is that it's actually running in real time. And if we go back to Slack, you can see it gave us a pretty in-depth answer. Cool, so our bot is working. The last step, which is something I'm very excited about, we just need to switch out our test webhook with our production webhook. So let's do that. So go back to your Slack trigger, come back to webhook URLs, go to production and copy that. And then what I want you to do is turn your active on. It should automatically save. Go back to your event subscriptions in the Slack API console. And when it comes to request URL, you want to click change, paste, and it should automatically be verified, and then select save changes. Cool, so that works. Now let's actually see what happens when we chat with our bot. If this is your first time using N8N, you can always go to executions to see what's happening. And as you can see, we got an error, and I'm pretty sure we got an error based off what I said previously. So if I come here, yep, so you can see that in production, for some reason, it's sending our text, specifically the message that the user sends, as the first position in the array. So what we need to do is go back to our editor, and we need to change our position. So all you need to do is go to where you see 1 and put 0. And then I want you to click save, go back to Slack and test this again. And it works. So that concludes the video. To give you a breakdown of what we built today, we built 2 flows. We first built a flow where we can ingest information in our Supabase vector database, which means that we can ingest large amounts of data. And then we built a flow that now we can have actual conversations with that data that we ingested in Supabase. And the cool thing about this workflow is that if you are a company that works mainly in Slack, you can spin this up in probably less than 20 minutes. And then now you have your own assistant within your Slack channel. So if you have any more questions about building within N8N or AI agents in general, leave a comment below, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.